This video is dedicated to Batman, who has recently passed away, and his identity was revealed to be Kevin Conroy. Hey guys, welcome to the Son of Wanda. Different setup here today because it was recently brought to the attention of the world that Kevin Conroy has passed away. And I had quite the hard time hearing that because Kevin Conroy is why I love Batman and is why I love DC. And Kevin Conroy is also a special representation of the things my dad loved. And my dad passed away last year. And so it's very emotionally resonant with me, all the work that he did as the voice actor for Batman, because he is Batman. I mean, he's the definitive Batman. No one will be Batman the way Kevin was Batman. Even of all the live-action Batmans, as much as I love Christian Bale's my favorite live-action Batman, but as much as I love Christian Bale, Kevin Conroy will always be Batman. He will always be Batman. The real Batman is Kevin Conroy. And he has passed away now, and I'm still having a hard time coming to terms with that because of how big of an influence he had on my childhood. I mean, I grew up watching animated series since I was like 4. And, you know, me and my family would watch it together. Me and my dad especially would watch it together. And I remember originally when I was a kid, I was more into Marvel than I was into DC. And I wake up one Christmas morning and there is a Justice League DVD of the original Justice League series. It's like 4 episodes of the original Justice League animated series on the shelf. And I was like, well, clearly that's for my dad because he's the DC guy. I'm the Marvel guy. But it turns out it was for me. And I watched them and I loved them. And that's when I was kind of getting more into DC. But I'd always been into Batman. I'd always been into the Batman universe. Like, I played the first Lego Batman game, and I watched Batman, the animated series. And it had a major influence on, again, my love for DC especially, and how I think about the Batman stories now and the Batman persona. I'm currently writing a Batman story, and a rule I made for myself from the beginning was if it doesn't sound like something Kevin Conroy would say, then don't write it. Don't write it for Batman to say it. Because if Kevin wouldn't say it, Batman wouldn't say it. And I always have these, conversations with my dad, these debates where we would say this character versus that character. And every time I said, like, so-and-so versus Batman, he'd always say Batman, no matter who the other character was. Like, if I said Galactus versus Batman, Daddy would always say Batman. And I always was frustrated at him for it. I'd be like, come on, Daddy. Galactus can be Batman. He's Galactus. He's huge. But my dad would always say, Batman always finds a way. And it was over time watching Justice League Unlimited, Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, watching all of these things, all done by Kevin Conroy, and some other Batman projects. And I slowly started to realize, wow, Batman does always find a way. And it was the specific persona of Batman defined by Kevin Conroy that got me there. If it wasn't him that started me, then I probably would never been into Batman the way I am now. Because Kevin is the perfect Batman. He is the perfect voice for Batman, but not just voice. The way he acts with his voice is Batman. I mean, no matter what art style it is, even if there's some I'm not a fan of, if it's his voice doing Batman, okay, that's Batman. And to hear that he passed was really like to hear that Batman died. And, Batman is such an important character to me. He's a character that I've come to love and appreciate almost more than almost any of the other superheroes, because my dad's favorite was Batman. And I realized why he liked Batman so much. And I understand what Batman represents. So, in honor of Kevin Conroy's amazing performance as Batman, his definitive performance as Batman, and his life, all I've heard is how nice he was. I never got to meet him. I always hoped that I would be maybe directing a animated Batman movie and get to hear Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill do their respective roles as Batman and Joker, the Cape Crusader and the Clown Prince of Crime. But I guess I'll just have to wait to see if there's a recording studio in heaven. But I was not ready for Kevin to pass. I hoped that would just be another 30 years later. But here we are, and I'm going to do my best to honor what he stood for as Batman and what he stood for in life as just the nicest guy and a guy that was devoted to his fans and just devoted to kindness. And those are very biblical principles. And I love Jesus, and Jesus was also devoted to kindness. So this video is dedicated to Kevin Conroy, and it is a top 20 episodes of Batman the Animated Series. The reason it's 20 and not 10 is because I started out with 10, and as I was going through the list, I realized, wow, I don't think there's a single Batman the Animated Series episode that is just solely bad. Maybe some like mediocre ones, but definitely not bad. And most of them, like if you're scrolling down the list of Batman the Animated Series episodes, that one's great, that one's great, that one's awesome, that one is sick nasty, brother. That's the kind of territory we're dealing with here. So I just couldn't pick 10. It felt too small. At some point I just had to be, you know what? I love Batman the Animated Series so much, I gotta pick 20. So we're doing 20. So let's start with 20. Episode 20, Blind as a Bat. This episode is in season 3. The general premise of this episode is that Batman is blinded in an accident caused by the Penguin stealing one of Wayne Tech's super weaponized helicopters. And the premise of the episode is that Batman now has to be Batman while he is also blind. And I think the perfect thing that this episode does is exemplify the determination of the character of Batman. The idea that even if Batman, like, if a detrimental thing happens to him, such as becoming temporarily blind, he can still overcome that and, stand for justice and stop evil without eyesight. Because, at first he starts to use this mechanical thing to help him see, but then that just goes awry. And he ends up defeating the Penguin without eyesight. And Penguin's all like, you're supposed to be helpless. You can't even see anything. How is this possible? And Batman just doesn't say anything because, as my dad would always say, he's Batman. That's pretty much the simple answer for everything in this list. All the reasons that Batman wins certain fights, how he knows certain things, how he can outsmart someone else. It's just because he's Batman. There's really nothing else to it. It's not that complicated. He's Batman. Kevin Conroy is Batman. Moving on to number 19, Appointment in Crime Alley. This episode is it's a straightforward episode. It's kind of smaller scale. There's not a ton of outer story or character arcs going on. It's just a very simple story and kind of episodic inside the episode of Batman has his yearly appointment in Crime Alley to, commemorate the lives of his parents by setting 2 roses on the ground where they were shot in Crime Alley, because that's the place where his parents were killed, Bruce's parents were killed. And he goes there, and during that specific time, the evil businessman Roland Daggett has hired some goons to blow up part of Crime Alley and try to run people out of their homes so they can blow up the area to renovate it afterward for profit for Daggett. And so Batman, all he's done is go to Crime Alley to celebrate the lives of his parents with his doctor friend Leslie Tompkins. But because of the situation with the goons trying to blow this up, and then there are angry people who don't want to be homeless, and then there are other guys attacking the people trying to get them out of their homes. He's dealing with all of these things, and there's a runaway trolley, and he's having to be the hero in this short window of time until the bombs go off and save everyone. And I think I just love that this is a story directly tied to what is a bad day for Batman like. I mean, I guess, anytime you have to fight an evil psychopath, it's not the greatest day, but for a complicated or chaotic day for Batman. And I think, again, it's Kevin Conroy's performance that wins it over. It's his relationship with Leslie Tompkins that I think is also a standout of this episode. She's one of the people who comforted Bruce like Alfred did when his parents were killed in the Crime Alley. And it's his ability to stop all of these bad guys And that's kind of the way he ends up celebrating his parents' life, is being Batman. And I think this episode exemplifies that perfectly, because he's stopping all of these villains and saving all of these people on the anniversary of his parents' death. And I feel like that's just one of the many great qualities of Batman, is that even if he has this like crazy important appointment to get to, and even if he has this bomb to go stop, he still has to help this person and this person and this person, and he does it, and he saves them all. And it's difficult for him, like he struggles, but he does it, and it ends up being in celebration of his parents' lives, because that's what he knew that his parents would stand for, is helping people. And so that's what he does as Batman. Moving on to number 18, if you're so smart, why aren't you rich? And most of these episodes I've seen like 100 billion times a piece, and this episode is definitely one of them. We're finally getting into the bad guy episodes, the episodes that, you know, focus a lot on the villains and like their psyches and the dynamics between them and Batman. And this episode is really fun. It is a fun episode because, you know, Riddler kind of gets a quick origin. I kind of wish they would have given Riddler the treatment that they gave so many of the other villains. Like, just do a character study on Riddler, which they kind of do throughout the episodes of the series, but it's not as deep as the other villains. So I kind of wish they would have done that. But this episode is still really great because, you know, it does kind of a quick origin for him that explains why Edward Nygma becomes the Riddler, why he becomes evil, and that he's out for revenge against his boss who fired him, even though Edward Nygma thought he was like the smartest employee ever. And so he's out for revenge. Batman and Robin are trying to stop him. Fun fact, Batman and Robin are together in all of the Riddler episodes in the series, which is only actually 3 that they focus strictly on fighting the Riddler. But, you know, this is the episode where you really get to see the Riddler, like, do all of his crazy Riddler antics. Like, he traps Batman and Robin in a maze. He has all these different crazy riddles. He has one that he does in Morse code, but it's like sent through the lights of Gotham City, like coming on and off to give him to give Batman Morse code. It's a fun episode. There's not a lot of depth to it, but it's just fun to see Batman and Robin go up against the Riddler, and the Riddler have all of these antics. Not to mention the best riddles, I think, in any project. I mean, I haven't really read the Batman comics, so I don't know exactly what kind of riddles Riddler does in those, but the riddles in animated series, to me, are the best. Because they're the most, like, you don't understand what they are at first. You have no idea what the answer is at first. Batman's the only one who can figure them out. But once you know the answer, it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. That's genius. And to think that somebody actually had to write that, to think of that, for Riddler to, you know, do in these episodes for Riddler to say, that's impressive. And that's good writing. But bottom line, I saw a person online call this episode essentially like the perfect Riddler episode, and it totally is. It's super fun, and it's just what you'd expect from Batman and Robin having to fight the Riddler. All right, next up, number 17, we have Dreams in Darkness. Now, this one is very different from the last one on our list. This one is very different from If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich? Because this one is a lot heavier. It is not like a fun episode. It is more of a trippy episode. It's kind of got like some Tim Burton elements going on. It is essentially Batman is infected with fear toxin by one of Scarecrow's goons, or in a fight with one of Scarecrow's goons, and is imprisoned in Arkham because the doctor there thinks Batman is crazy. One, because of, you know, how he's acting with the fear toxin, and 2, because he just thinks Batman is weird in general because, you know, wearing bat tights and going out and fighting crime and all that. You know, he has these own stupid ideas about, oh, Batman's, you know, kind of crazy and only fighting himself, whatever. But in the process of having to stop Scarecrow's plot of infecting all the water supply in Gotham City with fear toxin, which, funnily enough, is actually very similar, in fact, almost identical to the plot line in Batman Begins, where Ra's al Ghul and Scarecrow pour the toxin and the chemicals into the Gotham's water supply, except in Batman Begins, they had a machine to evaporate the water, turning it into fear gas. And in this episode, I'm pretty sure it's just generally pouring the toxin into the water so everybody will be infected from the water they drink. But anyway, Batman has to try and escape Arkham, go through these caverns to find Scarecrow's underground machine that's infecting the water supply. And he has to do all of this while being tripped out by fear toxin and seeing all these crazy things. But in the same way that Blind as a Bat exemplified Batman's determination, this one signifies Batman's courage. Because, I mean, it does show him afraid, and it does show him struggling. I think that's one of the best parts about the series, is that Batman is invincible, but not invincible. He's invincible in a human way. Like, he still struggles, and you can still, lay a few hits on him from time to time, but he always comes out on top because of his courage and his determination and his strong moral stance and moral conviction. And again, this episode exemplifies his bravery. Like, he's seeing visions of how his parents died. He's seeing visions of the Joker and Penguin and Two-Face and all these weird, crazy things. And he's like, he's this close to falling into madness, but he just pushes through that madness because he knows Scarecrow needs to be stopped. And in the end, Scarecrow ends up being the one to get fear toxinized. But he just, despite all these crazy things Batman's seeing, he's like, no, I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to destroy this machine and save Gotham City. And again, it's just an exemplification of his bravery and determination. So I love this episode. And it's really trippy and crazy and deep. And in this specific episode, for me, those are other reasons that it's likable. Moving on to number 16, What is Reality? This is another Riddler episode. Riddler has created this machine to trap Commissioner Gordon and this virtual reality world. Virtual reality before virtual reality was a thing, so this is kind of a prophetic episode. But Batman has to go inside this virtual world to stop the Riddler, and along the way he finds he has to solve all these riddles and in the end save Commissioner Gordon. And I think the reason I like this episode so much is that it's sort of a blend between Dreams of Darkness and If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich? Like, it's trippy in a way. Like, Riddler's making all these weird, crazy things up inside this virtual world that Batman has to, he solve all these riddles and figure out his way through it. And it's just fun to see him and Robin, helping him from the outside. It's fun to see them, try to figure out, like, well, what does that mean? And what does this little thing mean? And, oh, that's what that is. And, oh, yikes, that's what that means. It's really cool to see Batman in this specific scenario trapped in this virtual world that the Riddler controls, and yet Batman is still able to solve all of his riddles and outsmart Riddler and literally beat the Riddler at his own game, at his own virtual game. That again, the Riddler controls this world. His mind is all over it, and so you'd figure Riddler would be able to do anything he wants and beat Batman in whatever way he wants. But because of the Riddler's arrogance, he's just like, I control this world, I can do all this and that, but Batman outsmarts him in the end. So, and in this episode, it's an exemplification of Batman's intelligence, Batman's wit, and his street smarts. That even in a world controlled by the villain, he can still be like, well, what about this? And then the villain just loses his mind. So I love it so much. And again, the riddles in this episode are insane. Like him trying to figure out the different things. It's like, wait, what? But that makes perfect sense. It's so well written, so amazing. I love it. Moving on to number 15, Fear of Victory. And again, this is more of a simple episode. It doesn't have the trippiness of some of the previous episodes, or even the exemplification of Batman's strong characteristics as much. But it is a great episode for Scarecrow and exemplifies how terrifying he actually is. His plot in this episode is infecting the superstar sports players with fear toxin in order for them to perform badly in their sports, so he can bet against their teams and win a bunch of cash for his other schemes. And an explanation of that plot might not be the most attractive thing ever. It's like, that's it. Now, that doesn't seem like a great Scarecrow scheme, but it's the way it plays out that's so interesting, because you don't know all of those details at the beginning of the episode. You're kind of just along for the ride, and you're kind of figuring out things as Batman and Robin are figuring out things. And there's this amazing scene where, Robin's had been infected with toxin at this point, so he's all nervous, but Batman hasn't. And so they go to Arkham to make sure Scarecrow's in his cell. And as Batman's walking through the hall, you see Joker in one cell and he says something, and then you see Two-Face in another cell flipping his coin, and then you see Poison Ivy with her plant, and they play each of their themes, so it's just this really cool homage to each of those characters, and it exemplifies how much of a madhouse Arkham is and how it's kind of like the lair of the villains, and we'll get to that later. But he goes into Scarecrow's room, and he's not there. It's like a Scarecrow dummy. And then and then you hear like the Joker's, like Mark Hamill's amazing Joker laughter as that scene happens, like truly revealing that Scarecrow he's not in Arkham. He has escaped and he is out for Fright Night. So it's amazing the way that scene plays out. I think along those same lines, the reason that this episode is one of my favorites is the tension building. It gets you creeped out at certain moments. You start getting a little afraid. It's like, Scarecrow is really scary, because they redo his design for this episode. It's not what it was in Nothing to Fear, one of the earlier episodes first introducing Scarecrow. So he looks even scarier. So it's like, oh, okay, so that's not pleasant. But again, it's just amazing to see all these things play out, and Batman deduced this, simple villain plotline, but still poignant villain plotline because of the writing and the execution of it. And so, again, another great episode of Batman the Animated Series. Next up, number 14, The Demon's Quest. I love these episodes. It's actually part 1 and 2, but I put them together because they're meant to be one story. It would be weird if you just put 1 and 2 at like 2 different parts of the ranking, because this one's better. Like it makes more sense to put them together. So the first part of Demon's Quest is about Ra's al Ghul playing this elaborate trick on Batman to get Batman to be the leader of Ra's al Ghul's organization and preserve the things that Ra's al Ghul stands for. And Batman, of course, refuses, because Batman doesn't want to be the leader of a bunch of evil guys. So Ra's ends up trapping him and trapping Robin. But I think the thing that mainly works about these 2 episodes is the adventure of it. It's fun to see Batman globetrotting, because you don't see a lot of that in the series. Pretty much the whole series, he's in Gotham. All of the stories take place in Gotham. There's very few that take place outside of Gotham. These are one of the only ones. So it's just really fun to see Batman globetrotting and figuring, different things out, being a detective and being a fighter, fighting ninjas and different things like that. And it is the official debut of Ra's al Ghul as the main bad guy in the animated series. Like, he was alluded to previously and had like a quick cameo at the end of one episode. Off Balance was the episode. But now he's like the main villain of his own arc. And like I said, the main appeal of these episodes is the adventure. The solo adventure that Batman goes on, as well as his like conflicting relationships with Talia. Like, he likes Talia, but he also knows that Talia is the daughter of the demon, which is not good, because the demon is Ra's al Ghul, which makes her mildly evil, maybe. As well as him trying to fight Ra's, who he himself has his own ideals about the world, and he believes that the world is better off without humanity, and it is better for the planet. It does kind of have like some save the planet kind of vibes to it. But I mean, the way Ra's explains it, you can sort of understand his logic. But of course, Batman isn't going to have it, and so he stops him. But it's just fun to see this whole story play out. Batman do some globetrotting, and in the end defeat Ra's al Ghul and his master plan to, destroy human life on the Earth. So it's just awesome to see Batman in a large-scale story when so many of these stories are small-scale. Next up, number 13, Trial. This episode is great. This episode is just a phenomenal idea. There's so many of these episodes that are just great ideas. You can just imagine Paul Dini and Eric Radomski and Bruce Timm, like all of these different writers and directors in the writing and directing room, I guess, or whatever, and like just spitballing out these different ideas. Like, well, what if Batman did this? Or what if Batman found himself in this situation? Or what if Joker did this? You could see them in your head spitballing all these ideas. And I guarantee you most of them were great ideas. And even the ones on the cutting room floor weren't bad ideas. They were just ideas that they chose not to pursue. But this episode, I am so glad they chose to pursue this idea, because the main premise is the Rogues Gallery, Batman's entire Rogues Gallery, or I guess almost his entire Rogues Gallery. There are a couple missing, but put Batman on trial at Arkham City. I almost said Arkham City, at Arkham Asylum, and have this prosecutor lady, this new district attorney for Gotham, who has been against Batman up to this point, who has believed that Batman is responsible for the creation of all of the villains, who believes Batman is the one who should be put behind bars. She's totally against him at this point. But they make her defend Batman in a trial where Harvey Dent, where Two-Face is the prosecutor. And that's just a brilliant idea. Like, what can we do with the entire Rogues Gallery and not make it overwhelming or too complicated? I know, we'll do this. And it also puts on the forefront the answer to the question of, is the hero are the heroes responsible for their villains? And specifically, is Batman responsible for his rogue gallery? Because he has like a bazillion villains. Maybe like the most villains of like any superhero. And so, you know, you have to wonder at some point, like, did Batman kind of create this person or that person? Or, you know, like, is he responsible for their creation and, you know, them wreaking havoc on Gotham? And at first, the new district attorney lady believes that he is. But after making her best case to defend Batman in this trial that is hosted all by villains, the jury is the villains, Joker is the judge, like it's all just maniacs. And in her doing all of this, she realizes, wow, these people are really messed up. And she says this brilliant thing, then this true thing that, you know, I used to think Batman was responsible for these criminals, but now I realize that every person here would have ended up the same, Batman or not. And like the gimmicks might be different, but in the end, you'd all be, you know, figuring out ways to terrorize Gotham out there with or without Batman. And then she says, the truth is, the villains created Batman. And which is so true. Because it was like the original criminal, I guess Joe Chill, I don't know really exactly what it is in animated series, but who shot his parents, that essentially created Batman and started Bruce on his journey. So it was the villains that created the hero. And it is so true that when evil rises, because this world is inherently evil. This world is inherently fallen. The Bible says the world is inherently evil. So it makes sense that, you know, if the world is inherently evil and births so many evil people, someone would answer the call to justice. And someone would answer that evil with good. Answer that chaos with order. You know? And that's who Batman is. Like, Batman didn't start all these people on the wrong path. They started themselves on the wrong path. Even though they're crazy, even if they have this issue or that issue, or, you know, this gimmick or that gimmick, as the lady says, at the end of the day, they still make their choices. Whether to become good or stay evil, or become evil or stay good. In some cases, they all make their choices at the end of the day, who they truly want to be. And unfortunately, you know, all of them end up choosing craziness and chaos. But I really do love this episode because, you know, it does bring rest to the debate of like, well, did Batman, is he kind of responsible? Like, no. Either way, these people would be terrorizing the city and hurting people with or without Batman, and Batman is the one who was created by them in order to stop them. Next up, episode 12, Two-Face. This is another part 1 and part 2, and these episodes are a phenomenal example of one of the best things about Batman the Animated Series, and that is how it treats the villains and showing the perspectives of the villains. Like, it's not just about Batman, it's also about his Rogues Gallery. And almost every one of his Rogues Gallery gets these deep, heavy episodes to detail their psyches and give them each character studies. To detail their psyches and to detail how they view the world and their perspective on different things, and in some cases their fall from grace. And again, these Two-Face episodes are yet another example of the brilliance of the writers and how they write the different perspective of the villains, and how they really make these villains the definitive versions of the villains in the comics. Like, these iterations of the villains are the main ones that I would say, for the most part, are the best and are the perfect iterations of the villains. And Two-Face is no exception. The episodes detail, you know, because in the animated series, from the very beginning, you have Harvey Dent, who's a district attorney, who's a good dude. You know, he's looking to stop crime in Gotham, stop Rupert Thorne, the prominent crime boss in animated series. You know, he's a good guy, and he's best friends with Bruce. They hang out together, they laugh together, and Bruce tries to give Harvey advice. But you slowly come to realize that Harvey is, maybe not as good as he seems. Like, he is a good guy with a good heart, but there's also this dark side to him that just keeps growing and growing and growing in anger until all that anger comes out from this accident that happens that fully forms him into Two-Face. So he's literally half decent. The half decent side of him and the half evil side of him, but both have these skewed perspectives at this point of the world and how it works. And it's really sad to see because, you do see Harvey as a great dude at the beginning of these episodes and the beginning of the series. But he does have this dark side to him and this anger, like when he gets provoked, when he gets taunted with something or disrespected, he just starts to lose his mind. And, when Rupert Thorne essentially does that to him to the nth degree and threatens his job, he just starts to lose it. And in the end, because of the accident that happens, that side of him is burned into half of his face. So he loses his fiance, and he loses his life, and he just becomes obsessed with chance and this idea of fairness that he's created in his own mind. And he truly believes that chance is the only way. That chance is the end-all, end-all. And that his coin is the representation of what he believes is the great equalizer, which in his mind is chance. And I believe that is, similar along the lines of the plot line they chose for Two-Face in the Dark Knight trilogy. It is motivated by his trauma and him kind of believing that, nothing in life is truly fair unless it's 50-50. You either get the chance to live or you get the chance to die. Everybody has the same chance at good or evil. And it's ironic because his whole story is, he's so obsessed with chance and this idea of, well, you can either be good or you can be bad, or things can go out this way for you, things can go out that way for you. But he's still choosing just the bad side. So he's contradicting his own philosophy, which makes that even more interesting. And I think that the best part about this episode is the way they write his tragedy. At the end of the day, the way they write his fall from sanity. It's so heartbreaking to see because of Bruce's relationship with him and his fiance's relationship with him, and I think is the best version of the story with Harvey Dent. Maybe the Dark Knight one is. I go back and forth between the two. Number 11, Feet of Clay. These episodes are very similar to the Two-Face episodes. Except it's about Clayface this time instead of Two-Face last time. But they're still retain their difference. I mean, they're still very different from the Two-Face episodes, but kind of follow the same premise as far as character study of the villain and how this guy who, he wasn't like the worst guy before, but how he's kind of become one of the worst guys now. And it's about, this actor, Matt Hagen, who was in this car accident and lost his good looks that he used for acting. And that is what helped, got him all these roles. And so he started using this stuff that same guy, Roland Daggett's company, created to fix his face, and he starts getting addicted to it. But Roland Daggett won't give him any more unless he does these certain jobs for him. And, Matt Hagen starts getting obsessed with the stuff, and so he just goes into, like, the laboratory to just get all he can, and then Daggett's henchmen just dump it all on his face. And so he becomes this mud monster. And that's kind of the moment where you see, like it's already alluded to, but once he becomes Clayface, is the moment where you see him just truly, like he literally cries at one moment because he just believes that his world is gone. And that like him becoming a monster is just the nail in the coffin for his career, and really just the nail in the coffin for his life, because he sees all these great roles that he played. And he was such a great actor, and these different and diverse performances that he was so well known for, and he misses that, and he wants that back, and he wants to be all those different things again. He wants to be all these great heroes, but inside he feels torn apart because he believes that he's lost all of his humanity. He has no hope that there's any humanity left in him, so all he can see at this point is revenge on Daggett for swindling him out of the stuff to fix his face, and also making his henchmen try and kill him. But yes, this is, very similar to the Two-Face ones. This, pretty decent guy who, over the course of time, just, few too many rotten days, and came to the belief that there was no hope. And that's very relatable. Like, a lot of us have come to the state of like, oh, there's no hope. It's all over. It's just our lives are destroyed. There's no hope for a better future. There's no hope for a better life. It's just here and now. This is just who I am. I'm a monster. And it's put in the more physical and literal sense in these episodes, which is a great thing you can do with comic books is, there is that suspension of disbelief, but there is also the relatability of it. And these episodes exemplify that perfectly. Somebody count how many times I've said the word exemplify at this point in the video. But these episodes exemplify that perfectly. And, Batman tries to help him. Again, it shows Batman's humanity, that he's still trying to help Matt Hagen be who he used to be. And he says that, he can help Hagen, but Clayface doesn't choose to do it. He just decides that, I'm satisfied with my depression, is essentially the plot line of Matt Hagen. And it's so sad, but it's true, unfortunately. And again, phenomenal writing for a horrible tragedy.